Just want to welcome everybody here today. We're going to be talking about the Circa contest. We've got Frank B and we've got Phoenix Adam. My name is Scott. I'm at Vegas Horse Pools. We're just going to go over some basic Circa contest theories, if you will. And I think what will best way to start this out is I'm going to go ahead and bring Frank up and let him talk about the contest here right now. Go ahead, Frank.
Okay. Hey there, everyone. All right. So for a couple, I'm very big on basic strategy. So it's just basic concepts, separate from handicapping and all that. Just the fundamentals of participating in the contest. One thing is contest equity. That's the first thing that you should consider. And as it just so happens, the Circa Millions is shaping up to be a contest that's most likely going to provide real good contest equity, somewhere in the neighborhood of, my guess is 115 to 120% payback. Let's go with 115% payback, meaning that for every dollar you invest in the contest, immediately it's worth $1.15 because of the guarantee. So that's one thing that you should pay attention to every contest that you enter. As far as specifics of participating in the contest, one thing I think stands above all others as being important when putting together your picks or your pick for Survivor, and that is something I like to call selection scarcity. And what that means basically is, how popular is the pick that you made with the rest of the contestants? If it's, say, the number one pick, well, regardless of whether you win or lose that pick that week, that probably wasn't a good selection for your overall picture, because the object is to get other people eliminated. And if you're always among that top 1, 2, or 3 picks that are made among the contestants, well, when that game occurs, that's a wipeout game. There's a good chance you're going to be involved in it. And that's what you want to avoid. You want others to be involved in those, and you to sort of slide, go under the radar and pick less popular games. And I like to make this little analogy, I guess. Just imagine you have 10 entries in Survivor, and you have like a spank odds telling you limit increase. Just imagine you have 10 entries in Survivor, and you decide to pick 5 different games, 2 on each. So, for example, in week 1, 2 Redskins. Here I go again. 2 Washington, 2 Baltimore, 2 Minnesota, whatever. And then once the picks are all in and you get the distribution chart and you see that 40% of the field took Washington. Well, before the game's played, you need to be saying to yourself, that wasn't a good pick. Okay. It might have been the comfortable pick, but that's not one where you're going to end up being able to go the distance on, because you're in there with everybody else at a ratio that's greater than your number of picks that you have. So remember, you got 20% of your picks, and you're involved in a game that 40% of the people have. Realistically, what you're hoping for, if you really do have 10 picks, is that you lose those. You lose those 2 entries. You would prefer to take that. In other words, wipe out 40% of the field and you sacrifice 2 entries. Now, you'd rather have had no entries on it, but in that particular situation, you really don't want to win that game. And that's the strength and the power of selection scarcity and understanding the concept. So that would be my number one basic concept for playing Survivor. What do you think, Adam?
I'm definitely in the field of thought of avoiding the popular picks. That's always been my strategy, is to go down the board on the popularity data that you can get. Look for a team that has good win probability that week and ideally limited future value. So I kind of share your thoughts there. And then I think week 1 naturally is tricky because we don't really know who these teams are this year. We think we do. So that I always like to diversify the week 1 pick a little bit more than standard weeks.
yeah, just been able to, in the name of the contest, survive, because I think it is the most volatile week of the season. And yeah, listen, I know a lot of guys that they shove all their entries on one pick. Okay, and if they make it through there, they are in good shape, because week one, there is some carnage almost every year. And so this bold strategy of shoving all your picks in, all right, if it works out, you do improve your equity a whole bunch. But I'm with you. That's why I buy multiple entries, and I'm going to. This is something that this has occurred to me in the participation of Survivor, was because I was pushing pretty hard on one or two picks to start the season week 1 and 2, and I was losing half my entries in the first week, or definitely in the first 2 weeks. I remember 2 years ago when what was it? What's the scenario? The Raiders opened the stadium in Las Vegas. Yeah, well, oh no, that was another one. That was Colts week 1 at home against Jacksonville, and they lost. That was a wipeout game too for a lot of people. Probably, I think it was the most popular pick, and it lost. But I'm just pointing out how volatile the first quarter of the season could be. Week 1, I think it was last year, or no, 2 years ago. The Raiders opened their stadium and had a big Sunday night win. A lot of emotion. And then at the same time, in week 1, Pittsburgh went to Buffalo as a pretty decided dog, and they beat them. Well, week 2 certainly looks like a great spot, not just for betting, but for the contest. You got a team off a big, emotional win at home, going on the road to a team that's looking pretty good. They're at home, their home opener, and they laid an egg. I think I put 4 out of my 5 entries on the Steelers and was down to 1 entry just like that. So, that's the volatility early in the season. That's why when you're allowed to buy multiple entries, I do advocate doing some diversification, because there's just not enough sure things early in the season to just to shove.
Well, the Millions contest and the Survivor contest are completely different. So I just want to talk about Survivor for a second. Do you plan your picks for the entire season before week 1, with obviously an ability to make changes? But do you plan out every pick for the year, Frank?
Well, in Survivor, the one played at Circa, you definitely have to account for those little extra weeks that they throw in there when you got a limited number of teams. So you got to hold back those teams, or a percentage of them. When it comes to that, I like to hold back both teams that are going to participate in the same game. So, because things don't turn out at Thanksgiving and Christmas the way you anticipated at the beginning of the year. All of a sudden, a team that you thought would be a 7-point favorite on Thanksgiving, it's close to a pick. It's a 2-point game. And, you're stuck, you're kind of married to it. And I like to have I know some people like to have one team available from each of the 2 games, or, there's 3 games on Thanksgiving. But anyway you do it, but I wouldn't save just one team, is my point. And I do chart the path to start the season out. There's a number of resources out there on the internet where you can, it's pretty useful. You chart the path, but again, that's not something you're married to. You're just getting an idea of the way that things are going to start out, because if you remember last year, of the 5 or 6 teams that were regarded as the worst teams in football, half of them were pretty darn good. Giants, Seahawks. I mean, you could start rattling them off, and like half the teams that were thought to suck going into the season, they really didn't suck. And so you have to. You got to shift gears and reevaluate, what teams you're saving and what games you're targeting for weeks in the middle of the season.
Okay, that makes sense. Adam, do you chart your whole season out before week 1?
I don't chart the whole season out. I did that in the past. I feel like the teams and the volatility of the season change so much that, to me, the second half of the chart almost doesn't matter. So I like to look at things in quadrants with an eye to the end of the season as well. But that seems to work a little bit better for me personally.
So you're looking at them in quadrants because of the Circa quarterly payouts, right? Is that your theory?
Well, that, and I guess I tend to handicap in quadrants is anyways. And so when I'm getting ready to select this week's team, I'm just looking at maybe the next coming weeks just to make sure, hey, there's not a better spot to use this team. Maybe I should, just as my last kind of confirmation for that selection.
Okay.
So that's kind of my mindset.
Well, I know you cashed in both of the tournaments last year. So what would be the number one tip that you could give somebody that's entering the Circa contest this year for the very first time? What would be the number one tip you could give them?
I say, and it goes to Frank's game theory on Survivor, I think it applies to both contests. I try to avoid popular picks regardless. I mean, I think that's a baseline of kind of any contest that you're doing of any sort, I would say that for week one, for the millions, I would definitely be focusing on dogs because I think dogs have extra value week one because we don't know who these guys are. And again, my whole mindset is just to avoid the popular games, the narrative games that everybody's talking about. Washington will probably be exhibit A on this for Survivor this first week. I have no interest in that pick now.
Right. Well, the advantage that I see, and I'll let you correct me if I'm wrong, is if you would actually take the opposite side of Washington and you would happen to get lucky and Washington would lose, it's like getting 2 wins if the majority of the people in the contest are actually on Washington because you get the win where they get the loss. Would you agree with that?
In theory, I would agree with that, but I think it's masochist to pick an underdog in Survivor, especially in week one. But I won't do that until we get to the funky weeks and I got no teams left.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Frank,
I think he was referring to the millions.
I was, yeah, more than
Circa,
than Survivor. Sorry.
Yeah, but that's still a great story. Yeah. Frank, you've cashed in all of the tournaments a bunch of times. What is your number one pick for somebody who just
never
signed up
cashed in Survivor? Haven't cashed in Survivor yet.
Yet. You have to say yet, because you're going to this year.
Yeah.
So, what would be the number one tip that you would give somebody who came to Bet Bash, signed up for the Circa contest for the first time ever? What would be your number one tip to them?
I don't know if I have a number one tip, but just to address the point that Adam made and that you both were touching on as far as being like sort of going contrary, again, I'm very big on basic strategy because I came from the blackjack world, and that's the way, you're a slave to basic strategies in that type of endeavor. Otherwise, you're just not going to succeed. So I like to develop one for every gambling activity I get involved in. And when it comes to the contests, and this is pretty basic as across all contests and tournaments, is that when you're in, I guess you would say, chase mode, you're trying to make up ground. That's when you're going to do what you suggested, which is bet opposite. That's the only way to make up, that's the best way to make up the most ground. You want to be opposite what you anticipate the majority of people are on. Conversely, if you have a lead that you're doing well on your way up there, and you can expect a lot of people to do this, whether it's intentionally a strategy they're employing or they're just this is something they gravitate to and they're just so happen to be doing the right thing, is you want to correlate to as much of your opposition as possible. Because just imagine like you got a lead, going into the last week, and you got a 1 or 2 game lead. Well, if you were able to match your pursuer's picks, each and every one of them, you got a lock. And if you're the pursuer, you want to go opposite each and every one of the picks that the guy you're chasing, because that's your best chance to make up ground. And this is where things sort of I'm not going to say degenerate, but shift strongly to it's all about contest and tournament strategy and very little to do with handicapping. There does come a phase of a tournament, depending on the position that you're in, where it's all about strategy and has little to do with it. Doesn't matter what you think about the game. So for example, if I told you what the guy ahead of you picked, it doesn't matter what you think of the picks. Your best move is to go opposite each and every one of them. So, that's just one thing I'd like to stress is this is not real money betting. This is not, which is a reason that some handicappers have problems with this because they get married to, especially the ones that do primarily the contest and they don't really bet a lot. They put all their effort into their contest, and then they come up with a great pick in their head that they've handicapped and they want to use it in the contest. Now, the contest line might not be so good. It might be a bad line. It might be not only may it be a lesser line than the market, it might be just a half point off of a key number. And but they're so obligated to bet it that's it's like one step forward and one step back for them. They're not doing themselves a favor, but that is the nature of the participants in these contests. A lot of them are almost pure handicappers, and they can't really divorce themselves from their handicapping and defer to proper strategy. So I would say that if there's one takeaway from this discussion, it's that this is not live betting. This is a tournament, and you need to treat it as such.
I agree with that.
Well, I'm not a NFL contest expert, but I did a lot of studying on blackjack tournaments because I was involved in those for a period of time. And this almost perfectly mirrors, if you would read like Stanford Wong's book on blackjack tournaments, the theory is exactly the same. It doesn't really matter if it's cards or if it's football teams. It's the exact same theory. But one thing I keep being told about NFL contest is about the market people who just look at the market. On the card, team XYZ is a -6.5, but in the real world, they're a -8. So they take all the -6.5s. What is your thoughts on that strategy, Frank?
Well, listen, unfortunately, and to the disappointment of a lot of handicappers, it's pretty powerful. It's as I think the three of us all bet sports in sort of similar manners. We respect the marketplace, and with that being said, you're never going to go and take 6.5 on a game when the market's 8. I know neither one of you are going to do that. So, but on the other hand, you're more than willing to lay 6.5 when you know that the market's 8. You're gonna step on a baby's head to get to the window to do that. So it's going to be just as effective in a contest if you pick the card apart. And I've done it. In some contests where I don't really want to spend a lot of effort. I spend the first half of the season. I don't even look at the standings. I just take all the best plays on the card, and almost always by the halfway point of the season, I'm in decent shape. Now I'm not up there at the very top where I'm running away, because in order to get up to that level, you got to run good in a way that the majority of the field is not, and a lot of people in the field will be doing something similar to playing good numbers on the card. So that strategy will put you in a good position. Then you are going to have to go off that reservation and start taking some chances, taking some games, avoiding those games. Let other people take them and hope they start losing, and you take some independent game, maybe a market number game, and try to make up ground that way. And as the season winds down and your position becomes, I guess you would say, more dire, then you got to start considering what you guys were talking about before. You got to start considering going contrary to make up that ground, because that's the best way to do it. To make up ground fast is to get opposite of as many people as possible. And the easiest, the most telegraphed games that are out there that you can get opposite on are the ones that have line disparity between the card and the market.
And I think this is the perfect example. And you're one of the most well-rounded gambling guys that I know. And this is where being well-rounded really helps, because what you're really describing is a poker tournament now, where you're playing very conservative early on, giving the wild cards a chance to burn out. And then when you start to get closer to the end game, that's when you shift gears. Do you agree with that part?
Yeah, it's definitely a case of knowing when to shift gears, change your style of play. I mean, but it doesn't take a genius to get down to the last 3 weeks of the season and say, wow, man, I'm trailing. I'm on the cusp of cashing, of being in the money. I can't keep picking the line moves. I can't keep taking the line moves because everybody above me is doing it. I'm not going to make up any ground. That's not like some great revelation, but you'd be surprised at the number of people that are reluctant to do it because they just feel it's they value their win-loss record or their winning percentage way more than they should. I mean, you should care less what your picks look like, what your win percent. You're just trying to hit the money, So, and likewise in Survivor, don't worry about busting out early. If you made a good play, you can assess the worth of your play, the value, how good a pick you made in Survivor. When that distribution chart comes out, and you say, "Wow, man, I'm on the 7th most popular pick. That's pretty good. That's where I'd like to be each and every week." So before the game's even played, you say, "Okay, I can live with the results of this." If every week the card comes out and you are number 1 or number 2, I don't care if you advance for half a dozen, 8, 10. Eventually. It's going to come that time where you're going to regret doing that because you're going to go out with a whole bunch of other people. You are not going the distance being the most popular pick in the contest. It's just not happening because what you want to see happen is people eliminated, and you want to stay away from the big groups, and that's just not possible to keep going along. If it does somehow happen, you're going to be in there with a whole bunch. You're going to be chopping it with a whole bunch of people.
Right. That's definitely not where you want to be. Adam, you want to talk about the people that just you want to talk a little bit about the people who just look at the line moves? And I know that's probably not the strategy you use because you're more on the handicapping side. But you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. I think it's becoming more popular over the last 2 years with all the odd screens that are out now. It feels like everybody's kind of doing top-down stuff, throughout the marketplace. So I use the line moves. I feel like those are going to really show you the popular picks that week. So I got to really like one of those teams if I'm going to put one of them in my card. But as Frank said, they're a good baseline to get you going because I think a lot of people get hung up about it takes 70% winning percentage to get in the money. I think the mentality is I'm just, if I go 3 and 2 each week from the beginning, just do that. Even 2 and 3 is not, it sounds bad, but it's not that bad. If you can just maintain that and then you start to get hot and then separate yourself from people, is, the ideal process. So that's kind of how I look at it.
That makes perfect sense to me. I think this has been a great discussion, guys. I really appreciate everybody getting together here. Adam, do you have any closing thoughts that you want to make about the Circa contest? And we're so lucky that Circa is in the Las Vegas market because I would hate to see what sports betting would look like in Vegas without them because they have really pushed other operators to up their game. But do you have any closing thoughts on the contest?
I just want to give a shout out to Circa for especially the millions. I believe because he was at Bet Bash last year that Chris Bennett, I think, makes the weekly lines. And I just want to give him a shout out because they shade the lines. They know the sharp community well. And I know going in, a lot of times people have I want this team, and they'll tweak that line a half a point. And it really gives you good mental gymnastics. And I personally just enjoy working that card every week. And the way they set up the contest for us players is just phenomenal. So I just give a shout out to those boys. I think they've changed the whole contest world.
They've changed everything here in Vegas. We would not be the same market without them. Frank, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to give for anybody who's signing up this year for the contest?
Well, I guess the obvious advantage right now is just keep an eye on Circa Millions. Like I said earlier, it's almost certainly going to be an overlay. So that's going to be very attractive to a lot of sharp guys. Those last few days are going to keep their eye on it, and yes, you're going to get a real rush at the end because they don't want to leave. They're not going to leave all that EV out there for everybody else. They're going to come and suck some of it out, but I still think they're going to come up short. And so, give Circa the business. I mean, listen, they put these guarantees out there that make it possible for us to have participate in the contest. They do all the administrative work, which is not insignificant. And then on top of it, leave there the opportunity or the possibility of you actually having an overlay. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that in the gambling world. So I would say just get over there and get at least an entry in. And you know, what do you have to lose? Nothing. You're like I said, you're putting $1 in, and you're immediately turned into $1.15 or whatever the final tally is. You know, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and again, I want to thank you guys for being on here. My name again is Scott. I'm at Vegas Horse Pools on Twitter. If you want to reach out about anything that happened here today. Also, if you're one of the guys who watches the market to get your advantage in this contest, the Circa contest, please reach out to me at Spank Odds if you have any questions or comments there. And I just want to thank Frank and Phoenix Adam for joining us today. And I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you very much.